September 1st, 1939. The early morning mist clings to the fields of Poland. Silence dominates the countryside, broken only by the distant rumble of engines. From the horizon, columns of Panzer divisions advance with mechanical precision, their tracks carving deep lines in the earth. Soldiers move in perfect synchrony, rifles slung, boots steady, faces set in determination. Airplanes streak overhead, Stukas dive, sirens screaming, descending like predatory birds upon unsuspecting infantry and fortifications. Artillery roars in measured rhythm, targeting bunkers with calculated accuracy. Communication is seamless. Orders transmitted, acknowledged, executed within minutes. Civilians watch in awe and fear as the Wehrmacht's coordination unfolds. Tanks crush hedgerows, infantry follows the armored spearhead, engineers clear obstacles with methodical efficiency. It is a display of a military machine honed for speed, surprise, and decisive impact. Within this orchestrated chaos, one truth becomes clear. Germany has mastered the art of modern warfare. Strategy, technology, and human discipline converge in a terrifyingly effective force. One that will reshape Europe and challenge the world in ways few could anticipate. The seeds of dominance have been sown, but understanding them requires looking at how Germany built this effectiveness from the ground up. By the early 1930s, Germany was a nation scarred by defeat and constrained by the Treaty of Versailles. The army had been reduced to a fraction of its former strength. Tanks and heavy artillery were forbidden, and the Navy and Air Force were limited by strict caps. Yet, beneath this imposed weakness, German military thinkers began preparing for a new kind of war. One that would rely not on sheer numbers, but on coordination, speed, and innovation. The rise of Adolf Hitler in 1933 accelerated these plans. He prioritized rearmament and the creation of a modern military capable of rapid, decisive victories. The Wehrmacht was rebuilt with remarkable efficiency. Old officers and innovative young strategists collaborated to develop doctrines that would exploit mechanization and mobility. Tanks were no longer infantry support. They became independent striking forces, forming the spearhead of a revolutionary concept: Blitzkrieg, the lightning war. Industrial reorganization accompanied these military reforms. Companies such as Krupp, Daimler-Benz, and Messerschmitt were integrated into a war economy designed for mass production of high-quality weapons. Rail networks, roads, and logistics systems were optimized to ensure that troops, armor, and supplies could move with unprecedented speed. By the mid-1930s, Germany was producing more aircraft per year than Britain and France combined. And tank designs such as the Panzer III and Panzer IV were entering production with reliability and modularity that allowed rapid upgrades. Training and doctrine mirrored technological advancements. Infantry, armor, artillery, and air forces were integrated through combined arms exercises, emphasizing communication, flexibility, and rapid decision-making. Radio technology, often neglected by other powers, became standard in German tanks and command vehicles, allowing for real-time coordination. Soldiers drilled relentlessly, learning to maneuver with precision and react instantly to changing conditions on the battlefield. Political and military leadership were unified under a single vision. Hitler, while unpredictable, provided strategic direction, while generals such as Heinz Guderian, Erwin Rommel, and Walter von Reichenau translated that vision into operational plans. German officers were encouraged to act on initiative within the framework of these plans, a principle known as Auftragstaktik. This decentralization of command empowered lower-level officers to exploit opportunities immediately, rather than waiting for rigid orders from high command. Meanwhile, the Allies were slow to recognize the implications of these developments. France, Britain, and Poland maintained military structures shaped by World War I experiences. Heavy reliance on static defenses, linear command hierarchies, and underdeveloped mechanization. German planners watched closely, noting weaknesses and preparing to strike where mobility, surprise, and combined arms would overwhelm traditional forces. By 1938, Germany had tested these concepts in Austria and Czechoslovakia, annexing territory with minimal combat. These operations served as both strategic and experimental exercises, refining coordination between panzer divisions, Luftwaffe air support, and motorized infantry. Each campaign provided data: how long it took to deploy forces, how communication systems functioned under stress, and how terrain affected movement. The stage was set by September 1939. German forces, though not the largest in Europe, had been forged into a machine capable of executing complex operations with precision. Men, machines, doctrine, and industry converged into a system designed to dominate decisively and rapidly. The next step is to see how this preparation translated into battlefield success, particularly in Poland and France, where the German approach would shock the world and redefine modern warfare. The invasion of Poland in September 1939 marked the first true test of Germany's new military system. Unlike the static trench warfare of World War I, German forces moved with speed and precision. Panzer divisions spearheaded attacks along narrow corridors, supported closely by motorized infantry and Luftwaffe air units. Communication through radios allowed commanders at all levels to adapt instantly to shifting conditions, a stark contrast to the slow, hierarchical coordination of Polish forces. Polish defenses, although courageous, were fragmented. Armies relied on static lines, outdated artillery, and limited mechanization. German tanks, including the Panzer II and early III models, exploited gaps and weak points, encircling entire divisions within days. Stuka dive bombers provided close air support, demoralizing defenders and disrupting troop movements. By October 6th, Poland had been subdued, not just by firepower, but by coordination, speed, and the ruthless efficiency of combined arms tactics. The lessons of Poland were immediately applied to Western Europe. Germany prepared for the invasion of France and the Low Countries in May 1940. French and British planners expected a repeat of World War I, slow advances through Belgium, engagement with fortified positions, and drawn-out attrition. The Germans had other ideas. The centerpiece of their strategy was Fallgelb, the Yellow Plan, which emphasized rapid penetration through the Ardennes, a region considered impassable by Allied command. Panzer divisions moved in concentrated columns, supported by reconnaissance units and Luftwaffe air cover. Infantry followed, coordinating through radios and predetermined objectives. Tanks did not merely support infantry, they led attacks, exploiting breakthroughs and creating encirclements. Roads and bridges were seized rapidly, and German engineers cleared obstacles with remarkable efficiency. Speed, coordination, and flexibility turned the Ardennes into a conduit for disaster for the Allies. Air power was integral. Stuka dive bombers targeted bridges, rail lines, and troop concentrations with deadly accuracy. German reconnaissance ensured that armored units advanced along optimal routes, minimizing exposure to enemy fire. Combined arms worked in concert. Artillery softened targets, air support disrupted command and control, and armor exploited breaches to encircle entire armies. Within 6 weeks, French and British forces were in full retreat, and the French government would surrender by June 22, 1940. The effectiveness of Germany's military was not limited to equipment or numbers. It was the integration of doctrine, leadership, and industrial capacity. Tanks, radios, and aircraft were tools, but the system connecting them, flexible command, trained soldiers, and rapid logistical support, magnified their impact. German officers exercised initiative under Auftragstaktik, enabling them to respond instantly to opportunities and threats, without waiting for high command approval. Industrial organization sustained this approach. German factories had produced sufficient tanks, artillery, and aircraft to maintain operational tempo. Logistics were carefully planned. Fuel, ammunition, and spare parts moved efficiently along rail networks and roads, ensuring panzer divisions could continue advancing without pause. Training reinforced this system, with officers and enlisted men drilled to function autonomously within the broader operational plan. By mid-1940, Germany had demonstrated a revolution in warfare. Blitzkrieg was not a single tactic, but a combination of industrial preparation, strategic foresight, doctrinal innovation, and rigorous training. The world witnessed not merely victories, but the effective orchestration of military science, where speed, precision, and coordination outweighed traditional measures of force. Yet, these successes also revealed emerging limitations. Rapid advances created extended supply lines vulnerable to disruption. German units depended heavily on coordination. Any breakdown in communication or mechanical failure could halt momentum. These challenges, though secondary in 1940, foreshadowed the logistical and strategic hurdles Germany would face in later campaigns, particularly in the vast expanse of the Soviet Union. The next step is to explore the angles: human, technological, tactical, leadership, and moral that explain how Germany achieved this extraordinary effectiveness and what it meant for those on the battlefield. Germany's effectiveness in World War II began with the soldiers themselves. The Wehrmacht was composed of men trained to operate independently yet cohesively within a larger system. From enlisted men to officers, discipline was rigorous, instilled through relentless drills and wartime exercises. Soldiers learned to anticipate orders, react instantly to battlefield developments, and trust their comrades. A key element of human effectiveness was Auftragstaktik, or mission-type tactics. Unlike rigid hierarchies in many other armies, German junior officers were empowered to make decisions in the field. A panzer commander encountering an unexpected obstacle could reroute his unit, coordinate with air support, or exploit weaknesses without waiting for orders from high command. This flexibility allowed German forces to maintain momentum even in chaotic combat conditions. Morale and indoctrination also played a role. Soldiers were aware of the stakes, and the propaganda around German destiny and military prowess reinforced resolve. Units took pride in operational precision and their ability to execute complex maneuvers flawlessly. These human factors, discipline, initiative, and morale, magnified the effectiveness of tanks, artillery, and aircraft, transforming technological tools into decisive instruments of war. Germany invested heavily in weapons that combined reliability with innovative design. Tanks, such as the Panzer III and I-4, offered modular upgrades, allowing crews to enhance firepower or armor as the battlefield evolved. Aircraft, like the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and Junkers Ju-87 Stuka, provided tactical superiority, both in air-to-air combat and close ground support. Equally important was communication technology. Radios were standard in tanks and command vehicles, a significant advantage over Allied forces early in the war. Instantaneous communication enabled real-time coordination between armored units and supporting infantry or artillery. Reconnaissance data could be relayed across distances that previously required hours, ensuring that German forces could adapt quickly to enemy movements. Mechanical reliability and ease of maintenance also contributed. German vehicles, while sometimes complex, were designed for battlefield repairs, allowing units to remain operational despite heavy engagement. Combined, these technological advantages amplified human and doctrinal effectiveness, enabling precision and speed that often overwhelmed less prepared opponents. Blitzkrieg was not simply about fast tanks. It was a tactical philosophy emphasizing concentrated force, rapid penetration, and the collapse of enemy command structures. Panzers spearheaded attacks along narrow fronts, supported immediately by infantry, artillery, and air power. Objectives were clear: break through weak points, encircle, and neutralize opposition before reinforcements could arrive. Speed was crucial. German formations could advance dozens of kilometers in a single day, often bypassing strong points and leaving isolated units to be neutralized by follow-up forces. This approach disrupted enemy morale, created confusion, and minimized prolonged engagements. Surprise, coordinated with reconnaissance and aerial bombardment, ensured that opposition rarely had time to adapt. Combined arms coordination was the backbone of this tactic. Tanks did not operate in isolation. They were linked to artillery and Luftwaffe support. Engineers cleared obstacles rapidly, maintaining momentum. The result was a systematic application of force that magnified the impact of each unit, making smaller German formations more effective than numerically superior opponents. Leadership at every level reinforced effectiveness. Hitler provided overarching strategic direction, but generals like Heinz Guderian, Erwin Rommel, and Walter von Reichenau executed operations with autonomy. This combination of centralized vision and decentralized execution allowed for rapid decision-making on the battlefield. Operational planning emphasized initiative and adaptability. Commanders were trained to recognize opportunities and exploit weaknesses without waiting for explicit orders. This trust in subordinate leaders accelerated operations, minimized delays, and ensured that tactical successes could translate into strategic gains. Leadership was also deeply intertwined with doctrine. Officers understood how to integrate human skill, technology, and logistics into a coherent system. Their ability to synchronize complex operations across vast distances, under fire, and against unexpected obstacles was a defining element of German military effectiveness. Germany's effectiveness was amplified by its ability to exploit enemy shortcomings. Early campaigns revealed that many opponents relied on outdated doctrines, slow decision-making, and insufficient mechanization. The French, for example, trusted the Maginot Line and believed the Ardennes forest was impassable for tanks. German intelligence and reconnaissance identified this vulnerability, allowing panzer divisions to penetrate the weakly defended sector and bypass heavily fortified positions entirely. Poland, similarly, relied on dispersed units with limited armored support. The German military capitalized on gaps in communication and coordination, using fast-moving panzer columns to encircle and isolate entire formations. The ability to read and anticipate enemy behavior turned Germany's numerical and technological advantages into decisive operational outcomes, making speed and initiative lethal. Effective warfare requires more than strategy and weapons. It demands logistical excellence. Germany meticulously organized supply chains, transport networks, and maintenance systems to ensure armored and motorized units remained operational. Fuel, ammunition, and spare parts were delivered through an integrated system of rail, truck convoys, and field depots, allowing panzer divisions to maintain relentless pace during invasions. Field maintenance teams and mobile workshops enabled quick repairs, preventing minor mechanical failures from halting entire operations. The synchronization of logistics with operational planning meant that speed on the battlefield was sustainable. Unlike some opponents, whose advances slowed due to resupply delays, German units could strike hard and continue advancing, keeping the enemy off balance. Germany's efficiency was not merely mechanical. It wielded psychological power. Blitzkrieg was designed to demoralize opponents. Sudden, rapid attacks created confusion and panic, eroding the will to resist. Soldiers who expected linear, predictable warfare faced overwhelming mobility, coordinated air and armor assaults, and unexpected encirclements. For civilians and enemy troops alike, the speed and coordination of German forces conveyed inevitability. Towns fell before defenders could organize, communication lines collapsed, and morale crumbled. This psychological dimension magnified the effect of German tactics, turning operational success into strategic advantage. Resistance weakened under pressure, allowing smaller German forces to achieve disproportionately large victories. Underlying Germany's battlefield prowess was a war economy aligned with military doctrine. Factories produced vehicles and weapons in numbers sufficient to sustain rapid campaigns, while technological improvements were implemented systematically. Tanks could be upgraded in the field. Aircraft were maintained with standardized parts. Artillery and ammunition were compatible across units. This integration allowed for a seamless link between industrial output and battlefield requirements. Engineers could respond to frontline feedback, improving designs or adjusting production priorities. The result was an ecosystem where doctrine, human skill, and production reinforced each other, ensuring that German forces were equipped, trained, and capable of executing complex operations with minimal friction. At the heart of German effectiveness was the integration of all elements of warfare. Tanks, infantry, artillery, and air support operated not as isolated units, but as interconnected components of a single operational plan. Panzer spearheads pierced enemy lines. Infantry secured flanks and supply routes. Artillery softened strongpoints. Luftwaffe aircraft disrupted communication and supply chains. Each element amplified the others. The success of one unit depended on coordination with the rest, creating a force multiplier effect. What might have been a small tactical advantage became decisive through systemic integration. By 1940, this approach allowed German forces to defeat numerically superior opponents repeatedly, demonstrating that effectiveness was the product of interlocking systems rather than individual brilliance alone. These angles collectively explain why Germany achieved extraordinary effectiveness early in World War II. C. Human skill, leadership, technological superiority, logistical mastery, psychological impact, industrial integration, and combined arms operations converged to create a military force that dominated Europe with startling speed. The fall of France, May-June 1940, represents the definitive turning point that showcased Germany's military effectiveness. German planners had anticipated that invading France through Belgium would repeat the stalemate of World War I. Instead, the Ardennes offensive defied expectations. The dense forest, long considered impassable for tanks, became the channel through which panzer divisions surged southward, outflanking the Maginot Line and isolating French and British forces. On May 10, 1940, the German advance began. Panzer units, spearheaded by Heinz Guderian's 19th Nautical Corps, moved with astonishing speed. Infantry followed closely in motorized transport, securing flanks and capturing bridges. Engineers demolished obstacles and repaired damaged roads in real time, maintaining momentum. The Luftwaffe targeted rail lines, communication hubs, and artillery positions, ensuring that French reinforcements arrived too late or in disarray. French forces, though numerically superior, were fragmented. Command relied on static thinking and slow communications. Tanks were dispersed, radios rare, and infantry often out of sync with armored units. In contrast, German forces operated as a cohesive system. Rapid reconnaissance informed real-time decisions. Panzer commanders adapted to obstacles without waiting for orders. Artillery and air support struck where needed. The human dimension was equally decisive. German crews, trained to operate under pressure, maintained discipline even under artillery fire and air attack. Officers at every level exercised initiative within the framework of Auftragstaktik, exploiting enemy weaknesses as they appeared. This decentralized execution allowed smaller German formations to achieve effects far greater than their numbers suggested. By May 21st, German panzers reached the English Channel at Abbeville, completing the encirclement of Allied forces in Belgium and northern France. The speed and coordination of the advance created panic among Allied troops. Thousands were trapped, supplies exhausted, and morale collapsing. The British Expeditionary Force began retreating toward Dunkirk, culminating in the famous evacuation. Tanks were central to this victory. The Panzer III and Afforfer engaged French armor and fortifications, while lighter Panzer I and II models harassed infantry and supply lines. Even when confronted with heavier French tanks such as the Char B1, German forces used combined arms tactics and mobility to outmaneuver opponents. Air support disrupted command structures and forced defenders into reactive positions. The Blitzkrieg in France was not a single battle, but a series of interconnected operations. German forces seized key crossroads, bridges, and communication hubs. Panzer columns bypassed strongpoints, leaving infantry to mop up. The integration of armor, infantry, artillery, and air support created a force multiplier effect. Units could operate independently, yet remain synchronized with the larger plan, maintaining operational tempo and exploiting every opening. By June 14, 1940, German troops entered Paris. The French government capitulated on June 22, marking a stunning defeat. In just 6 weeks, a highly trained, coordinated, and technologically integrated force had overrun one of Europe's largest and most established armies. The human cost was immense, but the operational success was undeniable. Germany had demonstrated the power of doctrine, mobility, and integration on an unprecedented scale. The lessons of this turning point were clear. Speed and coordination, supported by flexible leadership and integrated technology, could achieve what numerical superiority could not. Germany's early victories were not accidents. They were the result of deliberate planning, rigorous training, and a system designed to overwhelm and dominate. This effectiveness would be tested again on a larger scale in the East, where logistics, terrain, and enemy resilience posed far greater challenges. The decisive moments in France laid the foundation, proving that German methods could deliver rapid strategic victories, but also hinting at the limits of sustaining such campaigns over extended distances and against formidable opponents. The next defining moment for Germany's wartime effectiveness came with Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, launched on June 22, 1941. Here, Germany confronted a vastly larger adversary across a front stretching thousands of kilometers. The stakes were immense. Success promised Lebensraum, strategic resources, and a decisive blow to Bolshevism. Failure would stretch German forces to their breaking point. At dawn, 3 million German soldiers crossed the border. Panzer divisions advanced like a thunderclap, spearheading deep penetrations into Soviet territory. Army Group Center, under Field Marshal Fedor von Bock, pushed toward Minsk and Smolensk, while Army Groups North and South moved toward Leningrad and Kiev, respectively. Coordination was crucial. Mechanized units, infantry, and Luftwaffe support operated in a synchronized dance designed to paralyze Soviet defenses. The Wehrmacht relied heavily on combined arms tactics refined in Poland and France. Tanks penetrated defensive lines, bypassed strongpoints, and encircled large formations. Luftwaffe aircraft, particularly Stukas and medium bombers, destroyed bridges, rail yards, and command centers. Artillery and motorized infantry followed, consolidating gains and eliminating pockets of resistance. Radio communications enabled units to adapt to unexpected Soviet counterattacks, maintaining operational momentum despite the scale of the front. Soviet forces, though enormous in number, suffered from doctrinal rigidity, poor training, and logistical deficiencies. Command structures were centralized, preventing junior officers from responding quickly to breakthroughs. Units were often isolated, supply lines overstretched, and morale fragile after initial German successes. Encirclement became a recurring pattern. Thousands of troops trapped in pockets at Bialystok, Minsk, and later Smolensk, where rapid German maneuvering rendered Soviet numerical superiority ineffective. The human element again proved decisive. German soldiers were trained to endure long marches, operate complex machinery under duress, and maintain coordination under fire. Officers implemented Auftragstaktik, exploiting weaknesses without waiting for directives from high command. Units advanced with remarkable cohesion, despite the scale and chaos of the Eastern Front, demonstrating that discipline, initiative, and doctrine could multiply combat effectiveness. Yet the operation also revealed limits. While early gains were staggering, capturing millions of prisoners and vast swathes of territory, logistical strain began to show. Fuel shortages, mechanical breakdowns, and the harsh Russian terrain slowed the advance as units pushed deeper. Extreme weather would soon magnify these challenges. Germany's system, effective in Poland and France, was now stretched over thousands of kilometers, highlighting the vulnerability of even the most disciplined and integrated forces. Despite these challenges, Operation Barbarossa initially exemplified Germany's operational brilliance. By late summer 1941, Minsk, Smolensk, and large portions of Ukraine were under German control. The combination of mobility, coordination, technology, and initiative had shattered the Soviet defensive plan. German armor, artillery, and air power acted in concert, creating a force multiplier that allowed relatively smaller units to outmatch the vast Soviet formations. The turning point in the East also carried strategic implications. Hitler's early successes reinforced confidence in Blitzkrieg methodology and demonstrated that Germany could project power on a continental scale. However, the extended front, extreme distances, and resilient Soviet forces hinted at the systemic limitations that would later contribute to overstretch and vulnerability. By the autumn of 1941, Germany had achieved unprecedented operational effectiveness. The lessons from France, rapid penetration, encirclement, and combined arms integration had been applied on a far grander scale. Yet, while victories continued, the seeds of future challenges were already present. Logistical strain, environmental extremes, and an enemy capable of absorbing initial blows and counterattacking. The decisive campaigns in France and the early phase of Barbarossa encapsulate the peak of German wartime effectiveness. Strategy, technology, doctrine, and human skill converged to produce victories that seemed disproportionate to resources. But these triumphs also foreshadowed the limits of even the most well-oiled military machine, setting the stage for the eventual counteroffensives that would challenge German dominance. By the end of 1941, Germany had achieved a level of operational dominance few armies had ever seen. France had fallen in 6 weeks. In the east, vast territories of Poland, Belarus, and Ukraine were under German control. Millions of soldiers had been captured or killed, and industrial centers were disrupted. The Wehrmacht had demonstrated that doctrine, training, and coordination could overcome numerical superiority. Yet these victories carried profound consequences. On the human level, German soldiers faced the dual realities of triumph and exhaustion. Extended campaigns meant long marches, harsh weather, and relentless combat. Casualties were mounting despite tactical superiority, and soldiers were increasingly aware that victories came at a high personal cost. Letters and diaries from Panzer crews and infantry reveal a mix of pride in operational success and apprehension about the vast territories still ahead. Particularly in the Soviet Union, politically, the aftermath solidified Hitler's confidence in his generals and methods. The Wehrmacht was praised for its efficiency, and military doctrine was celebrated as revolutionary. Blitzkrieg became synonymous with German effectiveness, and the world's perception of the Wehrmacht shifted from a constrained post-Versailles force to an unstoppable machine. Allied morale, by contrast, suffered significant blows. The speed and decisiveness of German operations created a sense of inevitability, shaking confidence in traditional military strategies and prompting urgent reassessments of doctrine, training, and industrial mobilization. Strategically, early successes reinforced the integration of technology, logistics, and doctrine. Panzer divisions had shown how mechanization, when combined with radio communication, air support, and infantry coordination, could achieve rapid encirclements and decisive victories. Supply lines, meticulously maintained, allowed armored units to advance faster than opponents could react. Even in the east, where distances stretched German logistics, the initial results demonstrated that coordination and planning could overcome sheer scale, at least temporarily. The German approach also had psychological and moral consequences for the enemy. The rapid collapse of French defenses instilled fear and confusion, leading to disorganization and surrender on a scale rarely seen in modern warfare. In the Soviet Union, early encirclements of large formations at Bialystok, Minsk, and Smolensk shattered confidence and forced Moscow and Leningrad to reevaluate defensive doctrine. Civilians and soldiers alike were confronted with a military machine that seemed not only efficient but relentless, capable of exploiting every weakness with precision. At the industrial and logistical level, Germany's successes confirmed the value of integrating production with operational doctrine. Tank factories, aircraft manufacturers, and supply depots were synchronized with frontline requirements, ensuring that mechanized units could maintain momentum. The human, technological, and logistical systems formed a coherent whole, validating the German model of warfare that emphasized flexibility, initiative, and combined arms integration. Yet, beneath the victories lay emerging vulnerabilities. Rapid territorial gains extended supply lines and stressed logistics. Harsh terrain and weather conditions, especially in the Soviet Union, began to challenge mobility and equipment reliability. Casualty rates, while initially manageable, foreshadowed the human cost of prolonged campaigns. The efficiency that had brought stunning victories was now being tested against scale, distance, and environmental extremes. The aftermath of these early campaigns demonstrates a key lesson. Germany's effectiveness was not merely a product of superior equipment or numbers, but of a systematic integration of doctrine, technology, leadership, and logistics. This synergy created a force capable of achieving strategic results that would have seemed impossible to previous generations of commanders. The subsequent phase, stretching into the East and beyond, would reveal both the limits of this system and the enduring consequences of human and industrial mastery in modern warfare. As 1941 drew to a close, the German military's operational triumphs were tempered by the realities of sustaining such rapid expansion. In the East, the initial successes of Operation Barbarossa had delivered staggering territorial gains and encircled millions of Soviet troops. Cities such as Smolensk and Kiev fell, leaving vast swaths of land under German control. Yet, the Wehrmacht faced growing logistical and environmental challenges that would ultimately slow its advance. Supply lines stretched hundreds of kilometers, often over poorly maintained roads. Fuel, ammunition, and food were transported through vulnerable networks that could not always keep pace with fast-moving panzer divisions. Vehicles suffered mechanical breakdowns under the strain of long marches, extreme temperatures, and rough terrain. Even elite German units began to experience delays, exposing the limits of operational efficiency when extended beyond Central Europe. The human toll was significant. Soldiers who had performed flawlessly in France and early Poland now confronted the brutal Russian winter, disease, and exhaustion. Casualty rates rose not only from combat, but from exposure and fatigue. Letters from the front reveal a mixture of pride in achievements and growing anxiety about the vastness of the territories still to be conquered. Despite rigorous training, morale began to strain under relentless operational demands. Strategically, the effectiveness of Blitzkrieg reached a threshold. While rapid maneuvers had overwhelmed smaller or poorly coordinated opponents, the Soviet Union's massive reserves and industrial capacity presented a different kind of challenge. The enemy could absorb initial losses, regroup, and strike back with sheer numbers. The encirclements that had been decisive in France were harder to maintain across extended fronts with limited resources. Politically, Germany's early victories cemented Hitler's confidence and bolstered domestic support for the regime. Allied nations, however, were forced into urgent reform. Britain accelerated tank and aircraft production, revised military doctrine, and prepared for protracted campaigns. The perception of German invincibility, fostered by Blitzkrieg's early success, pushed the Allies into adopting strategies emphasizing attrition and industrial endurance, recognizing that speed alone could not guarantee ultimate victory. Industrial integration, though advanced, now faced its limits. Factories could produce tanks and aircraft in large numbers, but the need for spare parts, ammunition, and replacement vehicles grew faster than supply chains could deliver. Maintenance units and field repair crews were stretched thin, and losses began to accumulate. Mechanized divisions, which had relied on flawless coordination, became vulnerable to breakdowns and supply interruptions. Psychologically, the early campaigns left a lasting imprint. German soldiers gained confidence in their training, technology, and doctrine. Enemies, confronted with unprecedented mobility and coordination, were often paralyzed, leading to surrender or disorganized resistance. Yet the initial aura of invincibility was fragile. As operations extended, the limits of German systems and the resilience of opponents became increasingly evident. By late 1941, Germany had demonstrated extraordinary military effectiveness, combining human skill, leadership, tactical innovation, technological advantage, and logistical planning. The consequences were clear. Rapid, decisive victories reshaped Europe, but maintaining momentum over vast territories and against formidable foes would strain the very systems that had produced early success. The stage was set for the next phase of World War II, where the limits of operational efficiency would be tested against the scale, environment, and resilience of the Soviet Union. These campaigns underscored both the brilliance and the vulnerabilities of Germany's military machine, setting the context for reflection on the nature of effectiveness itself. Germany's early victories in World War II were not the product of chance. They were the result of a systematic integration of doctrine, technology, leadership, and human discipline. Soldiers trained to act independently, yet cohesively. Officers empowered to make rapid decisions. Tanks and aircraft designed for reliability and adaptability. And logistics synchronized to sustain speed and momentum. All converged to create a military machine capable of reshaping the map of Europe in months, rather than years. The psychological impact of this effectiveness was equally profound. Opponents faced not just weapons, but a system, a force that combined shock, precision, and relentless coordination. Morale collapsed in the face of rapid encirclements, and surrender often became a rational choice when traditional defenses failed to adapt. Blitzkrieg was as much a mental and organizational strategy as it was a tactical innovation. Yet, the very systems that generated such extraordinary results also contained vulnerabilities. Germany's operational brilliance relied on coordination, supply, and initiative, all of which could be strained over extended distances or against resilient adversaries. The early campaigns in Poland, France, and the initial phase of Barbarossa showcased what meticulous planning and integration could achieve, but they also foreshadowed the limits that harsh terrain, long supply lines, and sustained resistance would impose. The legacy of Germany's effectiveness lies not in the victories themselves, but in the lessons they offer about modern warfare. Speed, coordination, and adaptability can outweigh numerical superiority. Integration of human, technological, and logistical elements can create force multipliers far beyond what raw numbers suggest. And yet, no system, however well engineered, is immune to the complexities of scale, environment, and human endurance. In the end, Germany's early dominance was a demonstration of the power of preparation and integration, tempered by the enduring truth that even the most effective military machine is bound by the realities of terrain, supply, and time. Its story is both a testament to human ingenuity and a cautionary tale about the limits of control in the theater of war. This reflection brings full circle the journey from meticulous preparation to battlefield, triumph and the sobering recognition of operational limits, completing the narrative of how Germany became so effective in World War II.